Lighting is energy for coral and for the zooxanthellae that live inside of the coral because they are photosynthetic. Once you have your reef aquarium light set up over your tank, you want to make sure you have a schedule down. So if that's an 8 to 10 hour photo period where you have your lights ramp on and then your lights ramp off throughout the course of the day. Now if you get a LED reef light, many of them have presets programmed in that gives you a jumping off point somewhere you can start, and you can dial in your lights over time. You want your ammonia to be 0, your nitrites to be 0, and you want to start showing signs of nitrate before you add corals to your reef tank. After you have achieved this, wait a few more weeks and really work on dialing in, testing your tank and getting that down.
We want to test alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, and phosphate regularly. And by regularly, we want to at least at the very minimum be testing those once a week. Here at the shop, we have a lot of coral that we're coming in and out of the tank, a lot of growth, so we test those elements every day. That's going to be the second part of my tip is, know your system. Obviously, the more you test it, the more you're going to be in tune with your tank. You're going to know how much alkalinity it's consuming, how much phosphate and nitrates your corals are processing. So the more you test a tank, the more you're really going to learn about your tank and about how your coral grows. Testing your tank really is the basis of coral growth and really learning about the hobby at its core. This is where you need to start. And if you start early as a beginner and getting on it, you're going to have more success down the road. And you're going to be actually probably have lots of more success quicker than people who don't test. And that's almost 100% guaranteed. So everyone just starting out the hobby, test your tank, stay in tune with your tank, and make sure your parameters are good. You're going to be ahead of the curve. Thanks, guys.
Now, after you're past the cycling process, your beneficial bacteria is still working on establishing itself and progressing in your reef tank. So you may go through things like algae outbreaks, diatoms, cyanobacterias. So knowing how to test your aquarium and testing it effectively and consistently so that you can see trends and getting used to all that before you add coral is very important.
We're going to be talking about coral placement. Personally, I think coral placement is one of the most important things on keeping a reef tank, or for keeping a reef tank. With my stuff that I'm keeping, like a lot of these gourds and stuff, it's relatively easy to kind of place them because you can kind of judge by the shape, the gourd, and where it was growing. And a lot of this stuff I personally collected myself, so I know exactly where it was collected and how I should place it in the reef tank. A lot of you guys can do that as well, like when you're buying a new coral, even if it's a frag, like a large frag, or even a colony, you can kind of judge on the way it's growing on where you can place it. Like these gourds right here, I got a few gourds, like some of them are standing straight up, and these ones were collected from a hard bottom reef, just on the limestone sticking straight up. There's a couple other ones over here on this rock, this large rock over here, that were obviously on a larger stone that was sticking up from the limestone, and they kind of have an angled out and up, sorry. So you kind of try to judge on where I should place them on the rock, so kind of mimic where they were in the wild. So, like I said, you can do that a lot with all your corals that you're receiving, like even elegans, corals, acros, just the way they're growing. I always try to mimic that in my aquarium the best that I can.
The coral we're going to be talking about today is toadstools. Toadstools have been one of my favorite corals for quite some time because I think they bring ample movement to a tank, and I also think they're one of the corals that can grow really well and are easy for beginners. Now, I'm not going to say that every soft coral is good for beginners, but I think toadstools are a great coral to use for a beginner looking to get into corals in the saltwater hobby. Now let's go ahead and talk about the placement of toadstools and where we're going to want to put them in our reef tanks. Toadstools are a type of coral that are going to want to get an ample amount of flow and also have enough space so that they can reach out and grow. Toadstools are a really awesome soft coral that are going to provide a really good amount of movement in a tank, so you're going to want to give them an area and a placement in the system that's going to get a good amount of flow so that their polyps can reach out and they can really show off and showcase their true beauty.
And what I'm going to be talking about actually is the product Revive from Two Little Fishes. Recently, I had a walling hammer come into the store and I placed it in the tank. And unfortunately, got into a little game of tag with a Favites, and obviously the Favites having a pretty crazy sting definitely put a hurting on that walling walling hammer, which in the event of any time that a walling hammer gets any type of damage, it's usually lights out for it. And actually using a product like Revive for a coral that has received some type of damage can actually promote healing. And I have found that using this product has definitely increased the survivability of corals that have received damage. So if you are in a position where something happens in your tank, some corals start playing tag with each other, and there looks like there's some damage, take it out of the tank, dip it in Revive, and put it back in the tank. Give it a couple weeks, maybe do it again, and you will definitely see an increase in the survivability of that coral, and you might keep it from going necrotic completely.
I do want to share one tip with you guys that I picked up recently. And the tip is that when you get a fancy new corals, don't try to change all your settings just for that one new coral that you want to please. Meaning that your light, your flow, etc., etc. I have been guilty, and that's why this particular tip hits really close to home for me, and I really feel this one. It would be a case where I pick up 1 or 2 corals and I feel like, oh, they could be happier if the light is a little bit brighter or the flow is a little bit stronger, so I tweaked it. So as a result, the rest of the tank got upset, and the new coral is still not happy. So my feeling from that point forward has always been like, okay, the new coral should adapt to what settings I have where it works for the rest of the tank, not the other way around.
Now, the biggest tip I can give you on when it's okay to start adding corals to your reef aquarium is water chemistry. You want to make sure you have your water chemistry and your parameters are stable, and you want to be past the cycling phase. Now, the cycling process is when your aquarium converts ammonia to nitrite and then to nitrate. Now, when you're adding coral to your reef tank for the very first time, I recommend starting with soft corals. Soft corals tend to be easier to keep. I recommend adding 2 or 3 new corals to your reef tank and watching them over the course of the next few weeks. You want to set yourself up for small wins in this hobby so that it encourages you to keep going. Because if you add too much coral up front and something goes wrong, it can be very devastating and be very discouraging for you in this hobby. So set yourself up with small victories that will lead you to success in the long run. And if you want to check out the top 5 soft corals that I recommend for beginners, you can click this video right here, and I will see you in the next one.